I run a syndicate, Kalen said, his storm gray eyes locked on Alara's face with brutal honesty. I control territory, businesses, people. I've done things that would horrify you. They stood at the top of the zenith spire, the city glittering beneath them like broken glass. Alara's heart hammered against her ribs. This man, this dangerous stranger who'd shown up at her door because of a drunken text sent to the wrong number, wasn't just wealthy. He was lethal. You should run, he continued quietly. You should block my number and pretend we never met. But Alara's feet stayed planted. Because underneath the confession, underneath the warning, she saw something else in his eyes. The same desperate loneliness that had driven her to send that message in the first place. And that terrified her more than his secrets ever could. Hey fam, welcome back to Afro-Soul Stories. If you're here for romance that doesn't play it safe, for love stories that dance on the edge of danger, then you're exactly where you need to be. This is a tale of wrong numbers and right moments, of loneliness finding loneliness in the most unexpected places. I'm so glad you're here with me today. Before we dive in, do me a huge favor, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already. This is how you encourage us to keep bringing you these stories. Now, let's go back to where it all began. A text message written in wine-soaked desperation. A number entered with trembling, careless fingers. When Alara's raw confession reaches Kalen, a dangerous man wrapped in expensive suits and deadly secrets, her small, invisible life explodes into chaos. He arrives at her door with obsidian eyes, a blood-dark orchid, and an offer that should send her running. But instead, it awakens something she thought died 3 months ago when Rain walked away. Now she's caught between fleeing for her life and falling toward a man who might be her salvation or her complete undoing. This is how it all started. The message glowed on Alara's phone screen like an open wound. I'm breaking tonight. Please come. Touch me until I remember what it feels like to be wanted. Hold me until sunrise so I can pretend I'm not drowning in this loneliness. Make me feel like I'm not invisible anymore. Her thumb had trembled when she pressed send. She'd meant it for Rain, the man who'd shattered her heart like glass 3 months earlier, the man who'd made her feel exotic and special before discarding her like a curiosity that had lost its shine. But through the haze of cheap wine and tears that wouldn't stop, her finger had slipped. 1 digit off. The wrong number. The message sat in the delivered column now, mocking her, irreversible. 27 minutes later, someone knocked on her door. Sharp, commanding, deliberate. 3 knocks that seemed to echo through her cramped apartment like a judge's gavel. Alara's heart stopped. Ice flooded her veins, freezing her in place. Her mind screamed at her to ignore it, to hide, to pretend she wasn't home. But her feet moved anyway, each step heavier than the last, pulled by some terrible gravity she couldn't name. When she pulled open the door, the man standing there stole every breath from her lungs. He was tall, devastatingly handsome in a way that felt dangerous. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his charcoal suit tailored so precisely it looked like it had been sewn onto his frame. Subtle tattoos crept up from his collar, disappearing into the expensive fabric like secrets written on skin. His eyes, dark and unfathomable, studied her with an intensity that made her knees weak. Behind him, a matte black super coupe idled at the curb, its engine purring like a predator waiting to strike. In his hand, he held a single orchid, its petals so dark they looked like they'd been dipped in midnight. "Alara," he said, and his voice was velvet wrapped around steel, smooth enough to seduce, sharp enough to cut. "You called for someone tonight." She couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't do anything but stare. She had never seen this man in her entire life. Now she stood facing a stranger who looked at her like he could read every scar etched into her soul. His expression wasn't cruel. It wasn't amused. It was something else entirely, something that made her stomach flip dangerously. "You didn't mean to send that to me," he said, and something almost like a smile touched his lips. "Did you?" Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. She shook her head slowly, unable to form words. "Mistakes," he said deliberately, his eyes never leaving hers, "are often the most truthful things we ever do." Her pulse thundered in her skull. "Who are you?" "Someone who received your words," he said simply. And someone who knows exactly what that kind of loneliness feels like. Elara glanced past him at the super coupe, so violently out of place in front of her shabby building. Everything about this man was out of place in her small, invisible life. "What do you want from me?" she breathed. "Nothing," he said. Then something shifted behind his eyes, something wounded and ancient. "Your message reminded me of someone I lost. My younger sister, Lyra. She used to write letters like that, begging to be seen by people who only knew how to ignore her. When she died, I made myself a promise." His voice dropped lower, rougher. "No woman should ever feel that invisible. Not while I'm still breathing." Elara's throat closed. The silence between them felt heavy enough to crush her. He reached into his jacket and produced a small envelope, extended it toward her. "I don't know you," he said quietly. "But I know this. A woman who writes those words deserves to be cherished, not forgotten. Take this. It's the title to a small apartment outside the city center. A place where you can breathe. Consider it a gift for reminding me why I'm still human." She stared at the envelope like it might explode in her hands. I can't accept that." "You already gave me something," he said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "You reminded me of that promise. That's worth more than any apartment." Her heart hammered against her ribs like it was trying to escape. She wanted to slam the door, wanted to scream, wanted to disappear. But another part of her, a part she didn't recognize and didn't trust, wanted to reach out, wanted to ask him to stay because something about this dangerous, impossible stranger made the loneliness feel smaller. And that terrified her more than anything else could. Kalen stood beside his car, cold wind biting through his clothes. Neon bled across the cracked street in waves of blue and silver, but his mind wasn't on Viridia. It was on the message, still glowing on his phone screen. "I'm breaking tonight. Please come. Touch me until I remember what it feels like to be wanted." The text had arrived without warning, cutting through his evening like a blade through silk. At first, he'd assumed it was a trap. Women didn't send him messages like that. When people contacted Kalen, it was for protection, for deals, for fear. But this message was raw, unguarded, bleeding. A woman pouring her soul into the void and hoping someone would catch it. For a man like him, a man who lived in violence and calculated moves, it was disarming. Almost fatal in its honesty. He closed his eyes and thought of Lyra. She used to write letters too, letters never meant to be sent, hidden in the back of her closet under silk scarves and forgotten dreams. Kalen had found them when he was 19, after she'd taken her own life. Words begging for tenderness, begging to be rescued from a world that saw her as decoration, nothing more. By the time she died, those letters were all that remained of her hope. Now, reading this stranger's message, Kalen felt something stir inside him that he thought was dead. A need to protect someone fragile before the world broke them the way it had broken Lyra. Inside the apartment, Elara sat on the edge of her bed, hands trembling. She couldn't stop thinking about him. The tattoos, the suit, the way his eyes had looked at her like he knew every truth she'd ever hidden. "Why did he come here?" she whispered to the empty room. "How did I even send it to him?" She picked up her phone, staring at the contact. The number was so close to Rain's, just one digit different. Her stomach dropped. One tiny error had brought a stranger to her door. Not just any stranger. A dangerous man. Every instinct screamed at her to block him, delete everything, pretend this nightmare never happened. But her hands wouldn't move because beneath the fear, there was something else. Hunger. Curiosity. The electric thrill of being seen. Kalen didn't leave. He wasn't the type to walk away once something caught his attention. Instead, he sat in his car, scrolling back through the message, reading each line again as if trying to decode the woman behind the desperation. "I just need your arms around me one more time. I need you to want me the way I'm still stupid enough to want you." He exhaled slowly, fingers tightening on the steering wheel. Why did it matter? He didn't know her. He wasn't supposed to care. Yet every sentence echoed inside him, pulling at something that had been silent for years. His phone buzzed. A text from one of his lieutenants. "Boss, the shipment's ready. We need you." Kalen ignored it. For once, business could wait. Instead, He typed out a message, his fingers hesitating over the screen. He was used to giving commands, issuing threats, controlling rooms. Not this. Finally, he sent it. You don't seem like someone who should be alone tonight. The buzz of her phone made Alara jump. She reached for it, expecting rain or maybe some cruel joke. But when she read the words, her breath stopped. She stared at the message, her heart racing. Should she reply? Every instinct told her this was madness. She didn't even know his name. And yet, she couldn't stop herself. I didn't mean to send that to you. It was a mistake. His reply came almost instantly. Maybe, but mistakes can reveal the truths we're too afraid to speak. Her hands trembled. She typed erased, typed again. Finally, she sent, you don't know me. You don't know what I've been through. His reply came seconds later. Then tell me. I'm listening. That night, their conversation stretched longer than she ever intended. At first, she kept her words short, careful, guarded. But slowly, without realizing it, Alara began to share pieces of herself. Her life working at the bookstore cafe. How she'd come to Viridia with dreams of building something beautiful, only to find herself trapped in exhaustion and isolation. How love had been nothing but disappointment. Men who used her, fetishized her, left her with nothing but scars. He didn't interrupt, didn't flirt, didn't try to fix anything. He just listened. When she finally asked, why do you even care? His answer was quiet but weighted. Because once I watched someone I loved cry herself to sleep every night and no one listened to her. Not even me. I won't make that mistake again. Her throat tightened. Whoever this man was, there was pain in him too. Deep, old pain that mirrored her own. She wanted to ask who he really was, but before she could, another knock sounded at her door. This time, softer, more patient. Her breath caught. She looked through the peephole, and there he was again. Kalen. But now he wasn't holding keys or envelopes. He was holding something else. A thermos and 2 cups. When she finally opened the door, his gaze met hers, steady and unreadable. You told me you needed someone tonight, he said quietly. I don't know if I can be that person. But I can sit here, outside your door, so you don't feel so alone. Alara's chest ached. No man had ever said something like that to her. Not in Viridia, not anywhere. And as she slid down to the floor on her side of the door, tears streaming down her face, she realized one thing. Whoever this stranger was, he wasn't just dangerous. He was the most dangerous kind of man. The kind who could tear down every wall she'd built to protect herself. And for the first time, she wasn't sure if she wanted to stop him. Over the next few days, Kalen began to appear in subtle ways. Not intrusive, not overwhelming, but impossible to ignore. A first edition book left at her station at the cafe, wrapped in plain brown paper with no note. A bouquet of dark orchids at her doorstep every morning. No words, just a presence she couldn't explain or escape. Alara's curiosity burned alongside her fear. She couldn't deny the strange thrill that ran through her whenever she spotted him from the cafe window, leaning against a lamppost across the street, watching, protecting. And yet the thought of who he really was, a man she didn't know, a man with shadows she couldn't see, terrified her. One evening, he appeared as she locked up the cafe, leaning casually against his car, watching her with those unreadable eyes. You work too hard, he said quietly. You deserve more than this life of constant exhaustion. She blinked, caught off guard. Who are you really? Someone who knows what it's like to be trapped in a world that doesn't care about you. Her stomach twisted. The pain in his voice echoed her own loneliness. Yet it carried a weight she didn't understand, something darker, heavier. She wanted to ask more, but words failed her. He didn't push. He just handed her another orchid and left, the engine of his car fading into the night. Later, sitting in her apartment, Alara held the flower, inhaling its delicate scent. Her mind raced. Every encounter with him pulled at something inside her. Fear, longing, curiosity, something dangerously like desire. She thought of the wrong number, the text, the confession that led to this. How had one small mistake brought a man like this into her life? And more importantly, why did it feel like he belonged there? By the weekend, she began noticing whispers. Coworkers at the cafe glanced at her differently. Strangers on the street seemed to watch her more carefully. Kaylin's presence was not unnoticed. Fear and fascination mingled in her chest. She wanted to run. She wanted to hide. But every time she tried to push the thought of him away, she found herself thinking of his voice, his eyes, the strange calm he radiated even when danger seemed close. For the first time in months, she wondered if loneliness could transform into something more. Something that drew her toward him, even if danger lurked beneath every gesture. And in that quiet, uneasy tension, Alara realized something terrifying and thrilling at once. She wanted to see him again. The invitation came on a Friday evening. A single text that made her heart stop. Meet me at the Zenith Spire. Tonight. 8 p.m. I want to show you something. The Zenith Spire was Viridia's most iconic landmark, a towering observation deck that overlooked the entire frozen city. Alara had never been. It was a place for tourists, for couples, for people who belonged in this city. Not for her. But at 7:30, she found herself dressed in a simple black dress that hugged her curves, her natural curls framing her face. She tried to look composed, but inside, her heart raced with nervous anticipation. The Zenith Spire loomed in the distance as she arrived. The city lights glittered like diamonds scattered across velvet. And there, waiting at the base, was Kaylin. He wore a dark suit, crisp white shirt open at the collar, revealing more of those intricate tattoos. Every inch of him screamed power and danger. Yet there was a softness in his eyes when they met hers. You came, he said simply. Alara swallowed hard. I didn't know what to expect. Expect nothing, he replied, his lips curling in that faint smile that made her pulse race. Tonight, you'll see only what I want you to see. They rode the elevator up in silence. The city sprawled beneath them, alive and glittering. He stood close, but not too close, just near enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. Why are you doing all this? She asked, trying to sound casual, but her voice betrayed her curiosity. He remained silent for a moment, eyes fixed on the skyline. Because you deserve to be seen, he said finally. You wrote words like someone who's been invisible too long. I can't allow that. Alara felt her chest tighten. No man had ever spoken to her like that. No man had ever made her feel simultaneously so small and so noticed. He handed her a small velvet box. Confused, she opened it to find a delicate bronze pendant with a compass charm. For you, he said simply. A reminder that even when you're lost, you have direction. You have worth. Her hands shook as she fastened it around her neck. Why are you so kind? Because kindness is a luxury most people can't afford, he said, eyes glinting. And I can. For a moment, silence stretched between them, heavy and intimate. She wanted to speak, to ask questions about who he really was, but fear tangled with desire, leaving her tongue tied. Then, unexpectedly, he took her hand. Not a harsh grip, not a claim, but a careful, gentle hold that made her pulse spike. You're afraid, she said, voice barely audible. Of what? He countered, his thumb brushing her knuckles. Of you, she admitted softly. Kaylin's smile was almost imperceptible, but it reached his eyes. Good, he said. You should be. They walked to the edge of the observation deck, the wind whipping through her hair, the city lights reflecting in her eyes. She could feel the tension coiling around him, the danger that radiated from every line of his body. And yet the warmth of his hand anchored her. You shouldn't trust me, he said quietly. I'm not the kind of man anyone should fall for. Alara's heart stuttered. Then why am I not running? Because you know something I don't tell anyone, he murmured, his voice dropping lower. You see through the masks. And you make me want to be better than the man the world thinks I am. Her breath caught. His words struck her like lightning, leaving her dizzy and disoriented. This dangerous, untouchable man was vulnerable before her. As the night deepened, they spoke not about business, not about the world outside, but about life, loss, loneliness. Kaylin told her fragments of his past, carefully, selectively. About Lyra, about the pain of growing up under a father who had no love to give, about the emptiness he'd learned to carry like armor. Alara shared pieces of her own life. The heartbreaks, the loneliness in Viridia, the men who'd used her for curiosity or sport. And as they talked, the distance between them shrank. When the city clock struck 11, Kaylin finally broke the silence. I want to take you somewhere else. Somewhere quiet, where no one can judge you, where you can be yourself. Her pulse raced. And if I refuse? He tilted his head slightly, studying her. Then I'll wait. But I hope you won't. The drive was quiet, the city lights blurring past. Finally, they arrived at massive iron gates that opened to reveal the Ironwood Manor, Kaylin's private estate. Alara's breath caught. The place was stunning, intimidating, a world she could never have imagined belonging to. Inside, the manor was both lavish and understated. Marble floors, modern furniture, subtle artwork, and the faint hum of security systems. A world built on power and control. Kaylin guided her to a private balcony overlooking manicured gardens bathed in moonlight. You're scared, he said quietly, almost as if reading her mind. I shouldn't be here, she admitted softly. I don't belong in this world. He smiled, a slow, devastating curve of lips. No one belongs in my world, he said. But tonight, I want you to belong somewhere. Here. With me. Even if just for a moment. Dinner was served in a candlelit room lined with bookshelves. The food was exquisite, each bite a revelation. Alara ate slowly, savoring everything, feeling like she was living in a dream. You're nervous, Kaylin remarked, watching her. Everything about you, is overwhelming, she admitted. He chuckled softly, a rare sound that seemed almost gentle. Good, he said. I want tonight to overwhelm you. In a good way. After dinner, he led her to a grand library. The room smelled of leather and cedar. A fire crackled in the massive stone fireplace. He gestured to a chair. Sit. She did, heart racing. He perched on the edge of the table opposite her, leaning forward. The firelight flickered across his face, highlighting the sharp lines of his jaw, the tattoos curling up his neck, the dark depth of his eyes. I've never met anyone like you, he said quietly. You're fearless even in your fear. Honest even in your pain. Despite everything, you still reach for connection. That's rare. Her chest tightened. I don't know what to say. Say nothing, he replied. Just listen. For hours, they talked. Every word drew them closer. Every glance tightened the invisible thread binding them. She felt safe and terrified all at once, caught between fascination and fear. Finally, Kaylin rose and approached her, slow, deliberate. He extended a hand. Dance with me. I don't know how, she whispered. I'll guide you, he said simply, and took her hands in his. Soft music began to play, filling the room. And as they moved together, hesitant at first, then gradually more fluidly, Alara felt something she hadn't felt in years. Warmth. Safety. Belonging. He didn't try to kiss her. He didn't try to claim her. He simply held her, guiding her in the dance, letting her lean against him, letting her feel wanted without pressure. When the music ended, he stepped back slightly, still holding her gaze. You're extraordinary, he said softly. And I want to know every part of you. But I won't rush. Not now. Not ever. Her throat went dry. She nodded, overwhelmed by the intensity of his words, the weight of his presence. Tonight, he said quietly, is only the beginning. Remember that. And with that, he led her back to the car, silent but close, his hand brushing hers in fleeting, electric touches. Back in her apartment later, Alara lay awake, silver moonlight spilling across her bed. Her thoughts spun endlessly about the manor, the fire-lit library, the dance, and the pull of a man who was dangerous yet tender, commanding yet careful. She traced the outline of the compass pendant, the bronze catching the light. And deep down, she knew one terrifying, thrilling truth. She was falling for a man who could destroy her life in an instant. And she didn't care. Because for the first time in a long time, she felt alive. Hello, loves. And just like that, Alara's lonely night turned into a shock she never saw coming. A wrong number, a powerful man, and a life she never imagined. But is this the start of true love or something far more dangerous? The shadows are closing in, and nothing will ever be the same. Find out what happens next in episode 2, The Price of Zenith. Thank you so much for being here. Please like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who loves dangerous romance. Until next time, stay captivated.